Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to this episode of the Big Business Brief. I'm Steve Beaman, your host, and it's always a pleasure to be with you as we travel a journey for the independent business community. This week, we're going to take a look at a bunch of major topics. We're going to talk in the big setup about the DEFCON report. This is a measure of economic stability that we produce each month, and we're going to look at what the overall economy is saying for you, the independent business person. Then we're going to take a look at metrics that you need to be following in your business, focusing this week on cash flow. And then we're going to talk about 3 things you can do this month to make your business more resilient to the changes ahead. So we've got a lot to cover and a lot to talk about. So welcome once again to this, the Big Business Brief.
In a world that's changing faster than ever, clarity is your greatest advantage. This is the Big Business Brief, where we break down what's happening, what it means, and what you need to do next. The big signal, the big x-ray, the big playbook, and the big owner. This is the Big Business Brief with Steve Beaman.
Well, welcome back. As you know, if you've followed us at all, you know that every week we do 4 key segments for you, the independent business person. First, we look at what we call the big setup, which is what's going on in the overall economy and what's going on around us that matters to you. Here we try to cut through the static and cut through the noise. We're not about political statements. We're about understanding what the numbers tell us for our businesses. Then we look at what we call the big x-ray. And the big x-ray is all about what's going on in your business today. What metrics do you need to understand? How can you improve efficiencies? And what keys do you need to unlock to make your business more resilient and more powerful? Third, we look at the big playbook. This is a look into your business strategy. We look down 7 lanes of performance here and talk about how we can make your strategy more bulletproof and how that works in a time of disruption. And finally, we look at you, the big business owner. And that we look down 5 paths to a transformed life. And today, as we do this, we've got a very special message. So we hope you'll stay with us through the whole thing, but we do cut clips of this to get out into the public, and we think those are relevant too. But let's get right started with what's going on in the big setup. Every month, I created something called the DEFCON report. And yes, I stole it from the military, where DEFCON 5 is peace, DEFCON 1 is nuclear war. As I thought about you and me in the independent business community, I'm like, DEFCON 5 is robust growth. We're happy, we're running, let's grow, 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 grow. DEFCON 1 is a depression. Let's survive, survive, survive. Well, last month in May, we were at 52, which puts us in DEFCON 3, right in the muddy middle, if you will. And this month in June, well, that number came down from 52 to 49, places it again right smack into what we consider strategic caution. This is an indicator designed to help you know where you need to focus your energy. We're not suggesting that you use it as a forecasting tool of what will happen. It's just a statement of where we are and what you need to focus on in your business. This is a hugely important thing because the economics surrounding you matter. And what I find is that often when you watch Fox, CNN, CNBC, whatever it is you watch, you're getting a political spin on the numbers. You're not getting reality. And the DEFCON report is there to give you reality of what's actually going on. And when we talk about reality, let's talk about what's the kind of the elephant in the room, and it's been here for a while, and that's the situation in Iran. Now, you and I both, maybe you could be for it or against it, but we understood at the beginning of this the importance of a relatively good outcome. The whole world relies on oil. I mean, if you've ever watched the movie Landman, Billy Bob Thornton does a great job explaining that everything we do is oil-based. And so we know the importance of oil. And when you restrict supply, that causes prices to go up. When you throw onto that uncertainty, you cause prices to rise even more. Those of you in agriculture and the farmers in this country understand very well the futures markets and commodities markets and how they interact. Well, the oil market is a global commodities market, and yes, it's primarily supply and demand. But what happened when the Iran war started is you restricted supply and you put a fear factor on top of it. What will happen? I'm a little more nervous than others about this situation. I don't see an easy resolution. And by the way, this is subjective and I am open to being wrong. It's my pure opinion, it's not a number. I look at this and say, I don't see a resolution coming down real easily on this. I don't trust the Iranian government. I've watched it for 47 years. I know the ideological bent of the IRGC. This is not something they're going to give into. They will strike deals and lie and cheat and steal just to delay it. We all know the midterms are coming up, and if oil prices don't come down by July, maybe August, you're going to have real problems in the midterms. They know that. They're fighting for that. And I don't think they're going to be willing to give up anything until they see what happens in those midterms. That potentially just creates more political chaos in the United States. Again, this isn't pro-Trump, anti-Trump, pro-anybody. It's just a statement of fact. So the oil markets are responding to that kind of uncertainty. We've come down from the futures markets at about $110 a barrel down to around 90. But that's still higher than it was. It's causing gas prices. We've stabilized, it looks like, at just under $5 a barrel or a gallon. But that's a real cost, whether it's your groceries that you buy, products that you buy at the Costco or wherever you shop. All of that's affected by gas prices because of shipping. So that is a huge uncertainty, and the DEFCON score is certainly picking that up. The second big thing still is the issues remaining, I'll say, with the tariff situation. That's not been resolved yet. We don't know exactly how the tariffs are going to play out. And again, this is one that you could have easily said, I'm all for tariffs. Let's go to fair trade, not free trade. I get it. There are some of you saying a tax is a tax is a tax and quit raising taxes, which just raise prices. I get that too. In fact, I find it interesting. There are those politically who hate corporate taxes, but they're all for tariffs. And then there are those who hate tariffs, but they're all for corporate taxes. They're the same thing. Whenever you raise the cost of a company's product, it raises the end price to the consumer. There's no other way around it. Now, some American manufacturers have clearly benefited from the protectionism that is brought about by tariffs, but the consumer, well, they've paid generally a higher cost for that. So there is a price being borne. We still don't know where the tariffs will all come down, but if you look at it objectively, you know that the Iranian situation far outweighs the tariffs right now. The other things that I look at are things like some independent business confidence levels. We're finding now that you, the independent business, have a confidence level that's just about the lowest point in history. We're seeing this. You and I live in the same world. You know this stuff as well as I do. A year ago, we were pretty confident. Yes, tariffs were a thing, but we were seeing some resolution there. We started to believe that we were going to see that capital coming in that's been talked about. So we looked optimistically for 26 and into 27. That's shifted. Those of us in the independent business community now are a little bit more nervous. We see things happening that we don't like. It's not that the economy is crashing, it's not. But we're seeing as a bifurcated economy where the big guys are doing really, really well. That's why Wall Street and the stock market's booming. It's the Main Street companies, you and me in the independent business community, we are the ones who are getting softer demand for our product. It's not bad. It's not collapsing. It's just a little soft. If you look at the Philadelphia Fed's manufacturing index, again, it shows softening manufacturing. It's not bad. It's just not good. So the DEFCON score at a 49 puts us clearly in this, again, the muddy middle, where it's difficult for you to say aggressively, I want to go grow. But you don't want to batten down the hatches and be overly conservative either. So it's a good time to be following your instruments. If you've watched for a while, you know that I'm a pilot, and I like to use pilot analogies. And what I see this as is a time that you go up flying and it's clear blue skies and everything looks fine, but then all of a sudden you see some clouds on the horizon. Now, they're not bad. They're not big storms that are going to force you to take an emergency landing, but there's enough choppiness in the air that you want to start focusing on your instruments more and more to make sure you get there safely. That's kind of where we are. Focus on your instruments right now. Look at your margins, look at your cash flows. In fact, we're going to talk more about that. But look at the core of your business in an economic situation like we're in and make sure that you are strong to survive if it turns south, but you're poised to grow if it turns north. Now, these DEFCON scores don't change rapidly, they trend. So, and it's not designed to forecast, it's just defined to say where we are. Can you extrapolate a trend? Yes, a little bit. We've seen this coming down since April when I started it. But is that predictive that July will be worse than June? Let's hope not. Let's hope that the Iranian situation gets resolved, the straits get back opened, oil prices come down, and we see deflation in gas-related prices, not the continued inflation. So this is the stuff that affects you. It's the real economic effects of running a small business or an independent business. And I've talked openly when people say, why am I doing what I do? The big guys are fine. Their profits are good. Their global positions are good. They're big in AI. They get a lot of benefit out of it. But they're the big guys. It's the guys on the independent side, and I'm not talking small necessarily. It's zero to, the solopreneur startup up to 100, 200 million. Some of the independents are pretty big. But you guys don't have the McKinseys of the world. The big guys do. They can get the $100,000 consultants to come in and do projects for them. I used to do that. When I worked at Wharton Econometrics, we sold big, expensive consulting projects to very big companies. Well, you're in a different boat. You need help at the smaller end of it, and that's what big is about. That's why I do these business briefs. It's why I publish the books I do and do all the content that I create. I'm out to help you, the independent business person, achieve and succeed in your dreams and your goals. So right now, again, at a 49, it's not panic, it's not collapse. Customers are being a little more cautious. And we actually see that in credit card delinquencies. Delinquencies are going up a little bit, as are auto loan payments. Now, to me, that's not a good sign. It means people are getting tighter on their cash, largely driven by increasing property taxes in some states, increasing gas prices throughout the country. Those kinds of things at the margin, and you know it, you know as well as I do, it affects your customers. The big guys, well, they can raise prices with impunity. Coke can raise their price on a can of pop by 10 cents and people still buy Coke. For you, in your business, whether it's farming or agriculture, HVAC, consulting, accounting, whatever it might be, for you to raise prices is tougher because you're tied directly to your customer. But it's a time to evaluate your pricing, and that's one of the metrics that we're going to talk about. So the big guys, if you look at the markets, they're booming. A lot of these big global multinationals are doing quite well. I was on the radio interviewed about AI and these data centers and all that means. Well, what it means is the big guys have the capital to put behind this world-changing technology. We, the independents, are users of it, and we benefit from that potentially, but it can also be massively disruptive and cause us to really lose our niche in our business if we're not careful. So we have books about AI. I run master classes on what it means for you. And I welcome you, of course, to reach out at steve@stevebeaman.com if you'd like to get one of those books. So as we now kind of settle with what's going on in the big picture or the big setup, I want to move next into the big X-ray, which is our chance to look at you and your company. Welcome back, and as we do every week on the Big X-Ray, we're going to take a deep dive into your business and what matters in your business and what you can do to make it stronger and better. This time, I want to make a statement, and I've said it before. A lot of people, it's repetitive because I say it all the time, but revenue is vanity, cash is reality. Go look at the most exorbitant examples of bankruptcies, and the number one that comes to mind is Lehman Brothers. Here's a company with huge assets, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars of assets, huge revenues, but they had no cash. They went bankrupt. That's not an uncommon story. Companies with big balance sheets and big revenue streams don't have the cash to make payroll. Whether you're a solopreneur starting out, the entrepreneur building your company, or the successful entrepreneur who started and built a company that's worth $50 or $100 million, you know as well as I do that cash is king. It keeps you going when things are bad. And today we live in a world where capital is becoming harder and harder to get by the independent. We'll do shows on that because there are ways to get you help for that. But we know that that idea of revenue can be misleading and cash is king. One of the things we talk to our business clients about when I coach people is understanding the speed of your receivable collection. And let me go to even a bigger thing. With a DEF CON score at 49, I strongly would urge you to quit looking at monthly financials, start looking at them weekly. Again, it's like flying the airplane. I'm not gonna, in a dangerous area right now, but I want to pay more attention to my numbers. Start getting your statement of cash flow, your receivables, payables, and balance sheets and income statement. Get those weekly if you can. You'll see trends established, for example, in your receivables. Are you collecting them faster or are they slowing down? That's a pretty good indicator for you for how your customers are doing. And they're all you're about, right? If your customers are slowing down on their ability to pay you, realize that they have the same fear, uncertainty, and doubt about the economy that you do. They're trying to protect their cash because are we sliding into a DEF CON 2 or are we going to turn a DEF CON 4? I don't know that, you don't know that, and neither do your customers. So look at your receivables, whether they're accelerating or decelerating, and that'll give you a pretty good sense of where your customers feel. The same on your payables. Can you get good terms or are they tightening up their terms? Again, you should maximize those payable terms so that you delay payment as long as you feasibly can to stay in good standing with your vendor, of course, but you want to keep that cash as long as you can. The disruption that we're going through right now potentially, which is technology, government policy, social change, geopolitical change, all of these things that are coming together to make this transition for you. The reality is you don't know what tomorrow holds. I was talking to a guy yesterday and we were talking about COVID. When the thing about COVID came about, and if you recall this, it was first kind of hitting the news in January of 2020 or 19. And it was in China and people were being locked down for this weird thing called COVID. By early 2020, it was starting to hit the US, and we started by March to see supply disruptions. If you recall, toilet paper was very hard to come by. Well, this friend of mine ran a transportation company, and he was looking at that supply chain problem and said, I don't know what holds tomorrow, but I know that there is a disruption to the global supply chain, and this, if we don't react to it and it gets worse, this could put us out of business. So he went out and talked to his board, and they went out and bought a bunch of raw material to inventory it. Well, as it happens, we went into a 1-year shutdown. The supply chain was vastly messed up, and a bunch of his competitors didn't have the raw materials to make the products they needed. Well, what happened for him? He was able to grow his business significantly because he had planned ahead, he had thought ahead, and he could now capitalize on his competitors' mistakes. That's what a DEF CON 49 says you need to be doing. You need to be looking ahead weekly and say, where are my numbers? What are the black swans that could happen? And am I prepared for that? There's opportunity abounding in those kinds of transitions, and you want to be up on that as much as you can. I encourage you to look, as I said, every week at 4 things. Cash on hand. Do you have enough to last 30, 60, 90 days? What is your cash? Secondly, accounts receivable. Not just the number, but how fast are they getting collected? Are they within term or are they delayed or are they accelerated? You know that your customers feel what you're feeling. Third, payables. Pay them as long as you can on term, but keep that cash. And fourth, look at your margins more closely than ever. Again, we've talked in the past about companies I've seen that went from $4 billion in revenues to $2 million, but they increased their profitability and their contentment by shrinking that. You drive for show, you putt for dough. Revenues are your driver, cash is your putter. Your revenues are for show in many cases. Yes, in a good economy, you want to grow revenues as fast as you can. But when we're in a muddish middle, you want to make sure that your margins per account are where you want to be. One of the things that we tell people looking at your company in today's environment, and when I say today's environment, I recognize that every day has its environment, but I'm looking at the DEF CON score and I'm looking at what that says. And what it says to me is to handle your current customers well. You and I both know it costs a lot less to keep a customer than it does to add a customer. I urge you to go through and meet with all of your customers and see where they stand on this stuff. How do they feel? Because they are in the muddy middle too. Now, obviously, there are going to be some that their industry or their geography is booming and they feel like, let's grow, grow, grow. Wonderful. But on a national basis, we are in the muddy middle. And if you'd like a DEF CON score based on your state, please write me at steve@stevebeaman.com and I'll produce one for your state. I frequently do them for Illinois, Florida, Texas, and you see vast differences in these DEF CON scores for each state. So as you look at your financial situation and your business, I urge you to start bringing your data in more rapidly. Get it weekly. Look at your cash, your receivables, your payables. Look at those things that drive your cash position. And always keep in mind, and Lehman Brothers to me is a really good example, and there are many, many more, but that's recent enough most of you remember it. They had a big balance sheet. They had big revenues. They just ran out of cash. Well, we don't want to see that happen to you. So regardless of your circumstance, whether you're the solopreneur starting up, the entrepreneur building, or the successful entrepreneur running a larger company, cash is king. And make sure that your payables, receivables, and margins are supporting the cash you need for a tumultuous economy. So when we come back, we're going to change direction and go into the big playbook. And this is a look into the strategy that you have to build the bigger, better, stronger company. Thanks. Well, welcome back, and we are moving into segment 3, the big playbook. This is, again, think of the structure here. We have the big setup, which is the global environment you're dealing in, the big x-ray, which is your company and how it's looking. Then we go to the big playbook, which is a look inside your strategy. Every business needs to have a firm strategy. And again, I've written book after book after book on my own experiences and why building that business plan, the plan doesn't mean anything in and of itself. Building the plan is enormously valuable. So in your planning process, in your times of quiet, when you think about what's going on in my business, what can I do to my strategy to make it more robust? Well, I want to give you 3 things today. And I wanted to look at these 3 things that all business owners should be doing right now in a DEF CON 49. Number 1, as I said earlier, tighten to weekly numbers. Let's not be satisfied with getting numbers monthly. Let's start looking at our numbers weekly. And again, you guys know I've done a mea culpa on here before about mistakes I've made. I've openly talked about it. I don't hide from it. And one of the problems I had is I didn't follow the numbers. I owned a suite of companies and I let the business general managers run the numbers. I didn't. It was a huge mistake. If you're running a business right now or you have a COO running it for you, step up and get your numbers. Look at them not monthly but weekly. Look at your payables, your receivables, your margins. Look at your revenues. Look at your pipeline. Look at your current customer list. Start to get more in touch with the numbers you have on a weekly basis. Because right now, you can start to change strategy and modify strategy a lot easier than if a problem builds down the road. So number 1, go to weekly. Number 2, deepen existing customer relationships. And again, I mentioned this earlier. It's a lot cheaper to keep a customer than to acquire a new one. There's a commercial I saw years ago, and it's an airline commercial. And a guy comes in, and they lost their biggest account. So the chairman comes in, and he says, listen, we're going to go out, and I want you to meet with all your customers. And he says that to the group. And one of the people said, well, who are you going to meet with? And he pulls out 10 tickets because he's going to visit all of his customers. You should be doing that too. If you see, and again, the Business Confidence Index tells me a lot. We in the independent business community are concerned. Again, it's not panic. It's not like, oh my God, it's coming down. But it's concern. There's a lot that could go wrong right now, and we're worried about it. If you feel that way, I promise you, your customer does too. You've got to be there with them during this time. I've talked a lot in the book I wrote, The Sales Warrior, about competent selling, and so much of it is about becoming a consultant to your customer. Be their business partner. Be the one they look to for their strategy and their playbook. Work with them, because right now, knowing your customers can prevent a big problem or exploit great big opportunities. We talk about how business is pretty simple, right? What do you sell, to whom do you sell it, and what problem do you solve? Well, you may find that with your product or service, you may be able to solve additional problems for your customers. If they're going through this idea of a muddy middle on the economy and they're a little bit nervous, they might want to switch things up, and you might be just the person they need to do it. So get to closer to your customers. Be their consultant. Be their partner. Let them become part of your thinking of your strategy, and let you become part of theirs. It will serve you especially well if we go through a time of transition. Number 3, and this is something that sounds easy, but it's not, and that's to simplify. What happens typically when you see an economy moving downward is the independent business community wants to double down. They want to do more of everything. They want to do more social media marketing, more hard advertising, more product development, more. Because their thinking is, if the headwind is increasing, I'm going to have to push all the harder. Well, the problem is that just creates complexity, which hurts your employees, your vendors, your business, everything. The smart business operators simplify in times like this. They go through their product, they go through their processes, and if a process took 10 steps to complete, they cut it down to 7. In your business processes, whether it's sales, accounting, manufacturing, whatever it is, there should be written processes for that department or that operation, right? Go through those and see where efficiencies lie. In a time of change, in a time of transition, you want to make sure you're as buttoned up as you can be. So you want to simplify in a time like this. So do your weekly financials, get to know your customers again and get to know them well, and simplify. 3 very simple things that you as the CEO need to be doing now. Because again, we're not in a bad economy. We're just in what's becoming kind of a muddled economy. If you look at consumer confidence, it's on its way down a bit because consumers are saying, I'm paying more money at the gas pump. I'm paying more money on my property taxes. If you live in states like Illinois, you're paying more taxes all the time. So you're looking and going, where am I going to get more money to spend? Well, if you're in retail, understand your customer spending habits. Understand the challenges that they have, because each state and each location has different challenges. But understanding those challenges will help you position yourself as a consultant to them and more value to them. So right now in this economy, and we can summarize today by saying, first, we're in a DEFCON 49. We're in that DEFCON 3 area. And we're there because the economy is kind of mixed. The big guys are doing really well. Main Street, it's not bad. It's just not quite as good. So it's Main Street that's dragging that indicator down. If it was just DEFCON for the big guys, it's probably a 60, 65. So you're probably in DEFCON 4. But for the independents on Main Street, the economy is a little softer. And we need to be aware of that, and we need to prepare for it. Then in the big X-ray, we talk about getting to know your numbers, get your cash flow in order, and whether that's payables, receivables, or net cash, get it in order. And then in the big playbook, we talk about those 3 things. Do your data on a weekly basis, get to know your customers, and improve your processes. When I come back, we're going to move into segment 4, which is the big owner, and we're going to talk about you, because at the end of the day, you're what matters. The solopreneur, the entrepreneur, the successful entrepreneur. Without you, the business can't thrive. Welcome back to segment 4, and as I say every week, this is my favorite segment because I'm dealing with you, the big business owner. I tend to go down what I've referred to as the 5 paths to a transformed life. So every week we're looking at financial stuff, and this is personal, not business. We're looking at emotional health, intellectual curiosity, physical wellness, and spiritual depth, pure spiritual help. Today, we're looking at something in the emotional path, and it's something that I call the power of steady. This is something that those who know me, who've seen these, say, boy, he's reactive and oftentimes overly passionate about things on a short-term basis, and I am. This is written largely for me to learn from what I'm saying. I had somebody recently say, Steve, if you listen to your own advice, you'd be a lot better off than you've been, and they're right. So these are pieces of advice written from my own life experiences. When we talk about the power of steady, Each of us in our businesses and our lives goes through trial and turmoil. You have big ones like business closures or failures, bankruptcies, divorces. Those are big things. But you have little stuff every day, customer losses, customer acquisitions. You have all these things that are good and bad and good and bad. The higher you go on the org chart, and this is said for you in the solopreneurship starting out or you in the entrepreneurship looking to scale, the higher you go in that org chart, the more steady a hand you have to have. Your vendors, your customers, your employees are going to look to you to not be reactive and not be, I'm excited, I'm depressed. I'm excited, I'm depressed. The power of steady is what they need. They need you to be the captain of the ship that's confident in your end goal. And yes, there are things that take you up and down daily, but you don't let it show. You don't let it get to you. You carry it with a steady hand, always moving forward toward the goal of your strategy. It's harder to do than you think, but it's necessary. And that will become a view of your leadership to your people. The more steady you are, the more they will look to you as their leader. It's hard. And again, I'm guilty as anybody of being reactive. You get a piece of information that comes in and it just sets you off. And so you want to react. You want to change your policy. You want to change your strategy. You want to just vent. Never do that in front of your employees. Keep that to yourself. In front of them, have a steady hand until you've made the decision to maybe adapt your strategy. But as I talked about the big DEF CON score, I said this isn't volatile. This isn't like the futures markets. It's up this much, down this much, up this much. It's very slow ebbing and flowing. And that's how you should be in your business. You should be focused on your goal, focused on the strategy to execute to get to that goal. And then as you look at it from yourself, when you see these shocks, you look at it in the context of that strategy and that playbook, and you say, okay, this will or will not affect the ultimate goal. If it doesn't, just ignore it. If it does, you've got time. You don't have to react tomorrow. Think through, what will this do to my strategy? What will this do to my objectives? And how do I modify them? You don't need to do it on a whim. Don't. Think it through. Get a coach, get a mentor, get a sounding board somewhere. I mean, obviously, Big is there to help with this kind of stuff, so join us at Big. Get involved in a coaching group. But the bottom line is when you see these kinds of shocks daily, and we all do, the goal is to have the steady hand. And it takes a lot of emotional strength to do that. As much it takes recognizing that it's a problem. Well, I can tell you from personal experience, it can be. Because I've been there. I know what it's like to take risks and work hard and know you're right. And then something hits you from over here and you react. And it's that reaction that creates a ripple effect down through the organization. So the steady hand, it doesn't mean you ignore your problems. It just means that you run a steady hand in analyzing and evaluating those problems. And you acknowledge reality, but you don't let it control you. Right? Create your own reality for the business. Don't let the externalities come in and affect you. It will be a problem. I've been there and done that. So the really successful owners I know, and I've polled them and I've talked to them, they don't do that. They don't react publicly. They hold a steady hand. They make adjustments to be sure, but only after they've studied the facts, which you need to get in the habit of doing. And they make small decisions at a time, and they look at one customer at a time. Because it's always about what do we sell, to whom do we sell it, and what problem do we solve. It's just that simple, and in that regard, that complex. So the truth is, as you go through your business, uncertainty is not the exception. It's the reality of every day. I did a radio program called Life Changes years and years ago. And I did it because I recognized the only thing consistent in life is change. That's it. Things happen, disruptions happen. But in business, as opposed to anything else, we have to have ourselves steeled against those disruptions so that we keep our eye on the goal, we keep our focus on the strategy, And we don't lightly change those things. We change them after a thorough evaluation of the facts. Critical, critical, critical as you look to go from solopreneur to entrepreneur to growing entrepreneur. You need to learn to become realistic without being cynical. It's easy to become cynical, but don't. Understand reality, but you've got your eye on the prize. You know the goal that you want. Be single-minded in achieving that goal. And if you don't have a goal, then let's talk again. Write me and let's talk. Let's have a Zoom call and talk about how we can bring clarity to that concept. Again, that's why Big exists. It exists for you. I'm one of you. I've been down these paths. I've ridden them good, bad, and ugly. I want to help you make sure yours goes down the path properly. So all of this stuff that I talk about is designed to help you have clarity in how you go down the road. If you think about business owners, and I've talked to countless of them, they all deal with this. This is not one-off. It's universal. You're not perfect, and I'm not, and they're not. We make decisions that are wrong. But if you do it thoughtfully and you put clarity in your planning process, so the playbook, the big playbook, becomes clear on how you're achieving the goal that you have to help that customer, well, if you do that, you can eliminate some of the variability and you cannot be reactive. In other words, you'll be thoughtful. And that is the big thing for you to take away from this big owners section today. Try not to be reactive. Don't let externalities cause you to make short-term decisions in your business, because those externalities could change. I watched financial guys, and this is just recent, from a major financial institution who manages money for somebody I know. At the time that Trump decided to do Iran, this broker, financial advisor, said, well, this is unstable, it's inflationary, those are bad for the market, I'm reducing your equity exposure. That's a reactive decision. What happened? The markets are up 35%. They missed it completely. Now they want to get back in. Well, that's exactly wrong, because they're reacting to externalities. Don't let that happen. Set your goal, set your strategy to achieve your goal, and then monitor it, but have the emotional stability to say, all right, is this externality changing my ultimate goal, or is it changing my strategy? And if it's neither of them, well, ignore it. Don't get caught up in chasing headlines. Don't get caught up in chasing the news. And don't let yourself get caught up in the negativism that's pushed on you each and every day from every single news outlet. And Lord knows, don't let yourself get caught up in the negativism of the podcast stuff that you see. All of it's designed to get you mad. It's very successful at it. But don't let yourself get caught up in that. Remember, emotional strength and emotional maturity is what will make you more content, put more contentment into your business, and allow you to run on a more stable, consistent ship. Well, that's our show for today. That's kind of what we've covered. We went through the big DEF CON report. We talked about the importance of cash flow and cash being king. We talked about 3 things you can do, and we talked about your emotional health. Every week we try to pick 4 topics that are real and are where the rubber meets the road. I came out of a session this week. I'd gone to a conference with a bunch of economists talking. And you know what's interesting? I walked out of there not knowing anything that was tangible to my day. It was interesting, it was informative, but there's no sense of where the rubber meets the road. I hope that this big business brief every single week has that rubber meets the road effect, because we want it to be useful to you. And we say I want it to be useful to you. I want it to be useful to me. I want to learn from this stuff. I want to execute it in my business, which is the Beaman Investment Group. I want it to help you execute in your business. By the way, if you're anywhere near the northern suburbs of Chicago, coming up in September, we're doing our first big business summit. This is a live, very intense, very immersive workshop where we're going to be going through your businesses very specifically. So if you're in the northern suburbs of Chicago, we hope to see you in September 19th, I think it is. And it will be up at bigbusinesssummit.com is the landing page where you can get more information, bigbusinesssummit.com. feel free to take a look at that, please. I'll be back next week, and we do these weekly. I don't think there's enough to do it daily, but if you want more information, just write me at steve@stevebeaman.com, and I'll get you what you need, whether it's a DEF CON report for your state, whether it's an analysis of your business. I urge you, go to BeamanIntelligenceGroup.com or BeamanIntelligence.com. Take the big X-ray, take the big clarity exam, take the 5 paths. Start yourself on a path to get your business growing into a stable, sound, and strong business. So until next week, keep learning, keep growing, and keep building a business that matters. Thanks for watching today. I'll see you next week.